Hello and welcome to Wanies Academy. Today we're going to be talking about clauses and phrases. Now, these are the objectives of this lesson. And the first is to define a phrase and a clause. The second is to identify the different types of phrases and clauses we have. The third is to differentiate between a phrase and a clause. And the fourth is to construct simple sentences using both phrases and clauses correctly. So let's jump straight into the lesson. Now, what is a phrase? Now, a phrase is a group of words without a subject and a final verb. It is used as a single part of speech. Now, it is important to understand that a phrase can have either. It can have a subject or it can have a verb. But if a phrase possesses both, it is no longer a phrase, it becomes a clause in that sentence. So if we say the short girl, here we have an expression that has a subject, girl, but it does not have a verb or a predicate. So this cannot necessarily stand on its own, making this expression a phrase. But if we say the short girl who can run, we have converted the phrase into a clause by adding the verb run, and we are also speaking more about the girl. So we have converted the first expression, which did not have a verb, to a clause. So that is the difference between a phrase and a clause. A phrase cannot have both a subject and a final verb. A phrase might have a subject, but would not have a verb. A clause would have a subject and a verb together because a subject and a verb together will make that sentence make a complete sense. So let's look at some other examples of phrases and clauses. We have a noun phrase, the tall boy. We have an adjectival phrase, with red shoes. Red describing the shoes, which is the noun in the sentence, which is the subject of the sentence, sorry, giving more information about it, and adverbial phrase in the morning. So let's jump into clauses now. A clause is a group of words that has a subject and a predicate. Now, just like I said, a clause is very different from a phrase in the sense that a phrase is just a coalition of words that does not have a verb to make that sentence or to make that structure make a complete sense. But in a clause, it is considerably different in the sense that it has a subject, which is the performer of the action, and it has an object or it has a verb that shows what the performer of the action is doing. Now we have different types of clauses, but we have two main types, which is the independent clause and the dependent clause. Now the independent clause can also be known as the main clause, and independent clause can also be known as the subordinate clause. Now, why are they called the main and the subordinate clause? It's quite simple. Now, the independent clause is called the main clause because it can make a complete sense and it can stand on its own. For example, if we say she sings well, it is quite short, but it makes a complete sense. Why? Because it has a subject, which is she. It has a predicate or a verb, which is sings, which is describing what the subject is doing, and it just shows how much she can sing. So this is an independent clause that can stay on its own. Then for a dependent clause now, it is simply a clause or a group of words that cannot stand on its own. It starts with something like this: because she was tired, or running to you, running away from the car chase. It's just a group of words that need more information about it to give you a complete sense that this particular group of words or this particular sentence makes some sense. So a dependent clause, or sorry, an independent clause can stand on its own. A dependent clause cannot stand on its own. Now, what are the different kinds of subordinate clauses we have? We have a noun clause, which, for example, we have what he said is true. An adjectival clause, the boy who came first is my friend. Who came first or first is giving us more information about the subject of that sentence, which is the boy. And then an adverbial clause, which simply goes, I stayed home because it rained. It is giving us more information about why the subject stayed at home, making that expression an adverbial clause. Now, there are differences between phrases and clauses. The first is, for a phrase, it does not have a subject and a predicate. As earlier stated, for a clause, it has a subject and a predicate. For a phrase, it cannot stand alone. And for a clause, it can stand alone. Now, these are some common errors to address when dealing with phrases and clauses. Now, for a phrase, it is important to know that a phrase is not a full sentence, so it should not be treated as a full sentence. An example would be because of the rain. Because of the rain is just an expression that cannot stay on its own. But if you add, I stayed home because of the rain, you have made a complete sense. Another one is to use subordinate clauses as a complete sense. Now, just like I stated before, a subordinate clause is a clause that cannot stand on its own. It needs more information to make that sentence make a complete sense. So if you say, although she studied hard, what is she studying hard for? But if you add the expression, she failed the test, the sentence becomes, although she studied hard, she failed the test. Turning that sentence from a simple subordinate clause which cannot stand on its own to a complete sentence, which is a subordinate clause and an independent clause as well. Now, in summary, a phrase is a group of words without a subject and a predicate. A clause is a group of words with a subject and predicate. Now, clauses may be independent or dependent. And then it's important to note that both phrases and clauses are important for building sentences. That would be all for now. Thank you so much for watching. Please do not forget to hit the like and subscribe button. Bye for now.